Have you ever looked up at the moon and wondered what it would be like to travel there? The vast, silent emptiness of space, the brilliant stars against the black canvas. It's a dream many of us share. But what happens when that dream turns into a fight for survival? Hundreds of thousands of miles from home. Tonight, let's journey back in time to a story not of triumph, but of incredible human resilience. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let your mind drift into the quiet of deep space. This is the story of Apollo 13. 3 astronauts, Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Haise, were on their way to the moon. Everything was going smoothly. A routine mission in the grand adventure of space exploration. They were more than 200,000 miles from Earth, a tiny capsule in the immense darkness, when a voice, calm but laced with urgency, cut through the static. "Houston, we've had a problem. An oxygen tank had exploded. It was a catastrophic failure that crippled their spacecraft, the Odyssey." Suddenly, the mission wasn't about landing on the moon anymore. It was about getting home alive. The explosion had taken out their main power supply and, with it, their primary source of water. They were forced to shut down the command module to conserve every last bit of power for Their new home became the lunar module, Aquarius, a small lander designed to support 2 men for just 2 days on the lunar surface. Now, it had to keep 3 men alive for 4 long days, on a journey around the moon and back to Earth. Aquarius was not built for this. It was a lifeboat, not a long-haul vessel. And one of the most critical resources that began to dwindle was water. The water on board was not just for drinking. It was essential for cooling the spacecraft's electronics. Without it, the systems would overheat and fail, leaving them completely stranded. The astronauts and the team at Mission Control in Houston had to make an impossible choice. Use the precious water to keep the electronics cool, or to keep themselves alive. The answer was clear. The spacecraft came first. Their lives depended on it. So, the rationing began. A strict, brutal rationing of water. Imagine being thirsty, truly thirsty. Now imagine that feeling, but knowing you can only have a few sips, a few ounces per day. Each astronaut was limited to just 6 ounces of water a day. That's less than a small cup, a tiny amount to sustain a human body under normal conditions, let alone under the immense physical and psychological stress they were enduring. As the days drifted by, the cold of deep space seeped into the powerless capsule. The temperature dropped to near freezing. The men shivered, their breath fogging in the frigid air. But the cold was nothing compared to the gnawing thirst. Dehydration is a relentless enemy. It clouds your judgment, saps your strength, and fills your body with a dull, persistent ache. Headaches became a constant companion. Their mouths were dry, their lips cracked. Every swallow was a conscious, deliberate act, a small victory against the overwhelming need for more. Fred Haise, in particular, began to suffer. He developed a urinary tract infection, made worse by the dehydration and the freezing temperatures. He was in pain, running a fever, and growing weaker by the hour. Yet there was no room for complaint, no time for despair. They were a team, and their survival depended on each member performing their duties flawlessly. Despite the agony, they had to stay sharp. They had to work the problems, calculate the engine burns, and navigate their crippled ship through the void. In the midst of this struggle, their minds, parched and weary, might have wandered. They could see the earth out of their small window, a beautiful blue and white marble hanging in the blackness. It was home. It was everything they were fighting to return to. A world filled with water. A planet where you could turn on a tap and let the cool liquid run freely. The irony must have been agonizing. Surrounded by the infinite emptiness of space, they were dying of thirst. They pushed through. Jim Lovell, the stoic commander, kept the team focused. Jack Swigert, the last-minute replacement pilot, worked tirelessly on the complex power-up procedures for the dead command module. And Fred Haise, despite his illness, continued to perform his duties as the lunar module pilot. Their discipline was extraordinary. They were astronauts, trained for the unexpected. But this was beyond anything they had ever imagined. It was a test of will, a testament to the strength of the human spirit when faced with the ultimate challenge. They conserved every drop. They knew that the water used for cooling the electronics was also their lifeline. They couldn't drink it, but they needed it to keep their ride home from burning up. The water they did have was mixed with potassium, which gave it a strange, unpleasant taste, but they drank it without a second thought. It was life. As they finally swung around the moon and began their long fall back to Earth, the tension mounted. They had to execute a perfect re-entry. They had to power up the frozen command module, a procedure that had never been attempted in space. If it failed, they would be lost forever. Using the last reserves of battery power, they brought Odyssey back to life. The hum of the electronics returning was the most beautiful sound they had ever heard. The final moments were the most perilous. They jettisoned their lifeboat, Aquarius, which had kept them alive for 4 days. As it drifted away, they watched it go, a silent, lonely monument to their survival. Then came the fiery plunge through Earth's atmosphere, the radio blackout, the period of silence as the spacecraft is engulfed in plasma, felt like an eternity for the world holding its breath below. And then a voice, their voice. They were through. The parachutes deployed, and the capsule splashed down safely in the Pacific Ocean. They had made it. They were home. When the recovery team opened the hatch, they found 3 men who were exhausted, weak, and severely dehydrated. They had lost a combined total of 31 pounds, most of it water weight. Fred Haise was immediately taken to the infirmary to be treated for his infection. But they were alive. The story of Apollo 13 is often remembered as a successful failure. They didn't make it to the moon, but they made it back to Earth against all odds. It's a story of ingenuity, teamwork, and technical brilliance. But at its heart, it's a story about 3 men in a cold, dark capsule, rationing water drop by precious drop, their bodies screaming for relief, but their spirits refusing to break. It's a profound reminder of our own fragility and our incredible capacity to endure. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, think of that tiny capsule in the vastness of space. Think of the discipline it took to sip just a few ounces of water while looking at a planet covered in it. It shows us that even in our most desperate moments, when we are pushed to our absolute limits, there is a strength within us that can carry us through the darkness and back into the light. The human will to survive is perhaps the most powerful force in the universe. Sleep well.